Hi, welcome to Hey Parents, Let's Chat. I am Jess Hunt, where we're trying to create an online resource, an online community for parents, so that you can go to heyparentsletschat.com. If there's something that you need help with, need ideas for, or an issue that you're struggling with, you can go to our chat section. You can find the video that might help you. Watch the video, but then also go to the chat section where you can input your answers. You can learn from other parents who have typed in some of their comments on that issue. If you are at heyparentslетschat.com, you can do it anonymously, where if you don't want people to know what your real name is, just use your initials if you would like, or whatever it is you feel comfortable with. But I firmly believe that we parents are the experts, and the more we share, the more we chat, the more we learn, and the better parents we become. So today's chat, I wanted to talk about something that I hear a lot of, and that's the word anxiety. And you're seeing it more with kids. You're seeing it more with kids in school, and we worry about stress. And that is something I want to chat about during our chat today is what is the difference between stress and anxiety? I feel like the word anxiety is just really being overused. It's being overused by us adults as well as the kids. And I want to preface this video by saying that there are lots of people that do have very serious anxiety. They're diagnosed. They end up, with panic attacks, and it's hard for them to breathe, and they have all these symptoms, and that needs to be taken very seriously. And I am not a doctor. I did not go to med school. I am a teacher. I'm a mom. I understand stress, and there have been times in my life when I have, in what I have felt was some anxiety for a short period of time. And I don't think it was something I needed to be diagnosed with, but I just physically felt like I was having anxiety. And so I understand what some of those feelings are like. But I really do think we need to distinguish between stress and anxiety. They are two very different things. And anxiety is, in my mind, it's just a more serious version of stress. But I'm going to actually tell you what some of the differences are, even though the symptoms actually are really quite similar. And so you have stress and you have anxiety, and they're just emotional responses. And so what stress is an emotional response to an external trigger. Okay, so there's a trigger that is making you stressed out. Whether if you're an adult, it could be bills, it could be you're about to lose your job. But I want to focus on kids because I feel like stress and anxiety, those are two terms that are like hot topics right now with kids. And you as parents might be wondering, my kid is really stressed out. Is it stress or is it anxiety? I know that I have considered that with my own kids a couple times as they were growing up. And so we're going to talk about this through the lens of parents looking at their children. Are our children stressed out, or do they have anxiety? So again, stress is an emotional response to an external trigger. So it could be they have a test coming up. It could be, and frankly, it could be short-term or long-term. So short-term would be, I have a test tomorrow, or I have so much homework to do. Long-term could be, for instance, the football season, if they're playing a sport, or, they are trying a new competitive dance program, and maybe that's a little bit more challenging. It could be that they're having a struggle with a friendship that's not a very healthy friendship. It could be a boyfriend-girlfriend thing where they're not really in a very great relationship, and that could be stressful. Again, these are external triggers that are causing the stress, okay? And so some of the symptoms for that are going to be if you see your kid being extremely irritable, they could be showing signs of anger, they could be having troubles sleeping, and they also might even have like physical symptoms where it could manifest itself in like muscle pain. They could have digestive issues. And so stress can cause emotional symptoms or they can cause physical symptoms. Similarly, anxiety does the same thing. They are very similar in terms of how they present themselves. And so the major difference between stress and anxiety is that if you have anxiety, you can have a very persistent, consistent feeling of worrying, feeling of stress when there is no external trigger. So that's the major difference. And again, I should preface this. I think I've already said it. I'm not a doctor. I don't diagnose, but this is how I understand it. And if you are concerned with your child, you might want to seriously talk with your doctor or a guidance counselor at school. But I just wanted to provide parents with a general overview of the difference. And so, again, with anxiety, there's an internal stress, an internal, consistent, persistent worrying without the external trigger. So there's no test coming up. There's no performance if they play in band or are in concerts or whatever. There's nothing that is an external trigger. They just have this constant worrying inside them. That would be anxiety. And so I feel like what we see most of the time with kids is not anxiety, but what we see a lot of the times is stress. And kids are going to be stressed for all sorts of reasons. It could be that they had something happen in the classroom, they're having a problem with a friend. It could be different for all kinds of kids because for some kids, that might be super sensitive. It could be something where you as a parent are like, why are you stressed out about that? Whereas other kids might have high tolerances for stress and might not get stressed out until they realize that they're doing super badly in school or they have a super hard test coming up. And so it's all relative because everybody is different. Now, I believe that stress needs to be handled. And there are many ways that you can deal with stress and anxiety. Because we've talked about the symptoms of stress. The symptoms for anxiety are very similar. You're going to have irritability, you're going to have anger, you're going to have a lack of focus, you're going to have insomnia, and so you're also going to have some of those physical symptoms where you might be having muscle pains, digestive issues. And so with either of these, whether it's stress or anxiety, lack of focus, some kids I have seen, they just get so stressed out, they're sort of blocked. They can't get past it. And so they are going to become super upset and consumed. And their whole focus is on like what they are stressed out about. And they can't move beyond until they deal with it. And so, and again, it's a range. It depends on the kid. Everyone responds differently to stress and presents it differently. But if you are worried about your kid, if they are stressed out, there are some active solutions that you can take as a parent. And I think it's so super important that number one, we're modeling this ourselves. So when we're stressed out, we're practicing these strategies so that the kids are going to learn from us as we're modeling it for them. But when you see your kids stressed out, it is super important that it's not just ignored, but that you are addressing it by teaching them strategies, um, giving them some deep breathing moments. Lots of kids who are like, get panicked, you can tell them to blow out the candles and go, blow out 1, 2, 3, 4, and then do it 5 times. And as they're blowing out the candles, it's making them take some deep breaths in. That oxygen is helpful. For some kids, meditation and calming environments are so super important. And those are moments where we can teach our kids to very calmly just settle in and be thinking about what the problem is and how are we going to solve it, and let's just take a deep breath. Meditation, relaxation is one option. Another strategy, frankly, this is one that I like. Physical activity is a great stress reliever. I'll give you one example. My son, going into he was an athlete, 3-season athlete all the time. But once he got into the middle school and high school years, it was a little bit more stressful. It's a little bit more high pressure, and so going to practice was very stressful. And he would get super tense, super stressed out. And I would say, okay, go have a good time, go have a time of practice. And then at the end of practice, picking him up, he was like a whole different kid. And that's because he exerted himself. He had all of this physical activity. I remember when he was in kindergarten, in the day, getting ready for the first day of kindergarten, he was super stressed out, very uptight, very high strung, showing anger, outbursts, you name it, he was doing it. And I recognized it's probably stress because kindergarten's coming up, there's the whole bus ride, there's like this big building, lots of kids. And so we would wrestle. I would get right on the floor. We'd have wrestling matches. And it was a great way to have a physical exertion. And he felt more relaxed after we did that. And so these are just some suggestions and some ideas. And it kind of depends on your kid and how they respond to, and also like what their trigger is. You can't do anything about the first day of school. It's going to happen. You can't ignore it. It's just going to happen. And so you have to have strategies that can help them deal with it. You can't eliminate the first day of school. It's just going to happen. But that gets me to my next suggestion, which is find out what the trigger is and try to solve the problem. So if you find that your kid is super stressed out about something, like let's say it's a test coming up, okay, talk to them, find out what the problem is, and if that is a trigger, then try to take steps that are proactive and positive to make them feel better, make them feel more prepared. Okay, let's get some note cards. Let me help you study. How about we go over some videos on, if it's a math test, let's go to Khan Academy and look up some information. How can I help you? I find that when kids are stressed out about something, if they can take every single step, every single measure that they can to prepare for that dreaded event, then they're going to feel less stress about it. If they're more prepared for it, they will feel less stress. So another strategy I have found is that lots of kids who get super stressed, they are going to feel overwhelmed. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, you're going to feel more stressed, and then you feel more stressed, you get more overwhelmed, and it's a vicious cycle. And so if you have a child that is going through some of those feelings, I find creating lists to be super helpful. Okay, if you've got a lot going on, I remember I had one student who was telling me she was so super stressed because she had a ton of chores at home. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about that. Tell me what chores you have. Let's make a list. And so making a list sometimes makes kids feel less overwhelmed because they might be feeling overwhelmed, but once you make a list, it's like, dude, you only have three things to do. And when you only have three things on your list, it looks less overwhelming. And in addition to that, I always tell kids, make a list of the things that you need to do, and that way you just cross them off as you go. And that physical action of crossing something off a list is so good for your brain. It makes you feel like you've accomplished something. Um, and so that is a strategy that I have found to be super helpful. Another thing that you really want to pay attention to with kids that have stress is diet and nutrition. I'm a firm believer in healthy foods and it's going to make you feel good. If you, and this is a really hard thing because lots of us as adults might have comfort foods where if we're stressed out, some of us might turn to eating. That's not a fabulous strategy because if you're going to start eating unhealthy foods as a strategy, you're then just going to feel worse. And so eating healthy foods is super helpful. And you might not talk about this with the kids because they're going to be like, whatever. But you could provide that for them without them even realizing it. And then have the conversations with them and be like, after like a really healthy meal, you might say, are you feeling any better? And if they say yes, then you can point out, well, I wonder, you had such a really healthy meal. Perhaps that was helpful. Let's try that again tomorrow. And so another thing that you really want to pay attention to when kids are stressed out is getting a good night's sleep. Because if the symptoms are, that they have a hard time sleeping or they have insomnia, that's going to make the stress the next day even harder to deal with because now they're overtired in addition to being stressed out about whatever. And so you really want to make sure that you have really good bedtime habits for your kids, have the same routine. And if you don't have a good routine, then start one. No matter what age your kid is, you can always start a new routine. And whenever we start a new routine, the rule of thumb is like 2 weeks until it becomes habit. For some people, it might be 3. But you need to start a new routine and stick with it consistently for about 2 weeks, and then it becomes more ingrained as part of your routine. And you can start a new routine with, for lots of people, taking a shower or having a bath before they go to bed. Maybe rubbing some lavender lotion on you would help you before you go to bed. And certainly no screen time before you go to bed because that's just going to activate and trigger all this activity in your brain when you want to be relaxing and turning your brain off. You certainly could encourage reading, especially kids that don't like to read. This is awesome. Give them a book, they'll fall asleep just like that. So these are just some suggestions. One of the most important that I want to talk about is if you have a problem that is causing you stress, think about what you would do as an adult. I know that when I'm stressed out, I feel better when I talk about it. And so if you have a kid that is stressed out, get them to talk to you. Find out what the problem is and then solve that problem. Because what you're doing is you're eliminating the trigger. And this is the most effective strategy. And this is something I try to teach kids, in my kids at home, of course, but even my kids in the classroom. If you're stressed out about something, holding it inside and ignoring it is not going to help. But addressing it and talking about it and then solving the problem will help. I remember I had a little girl and she was absolutely in tears. And so of course I addressed it and I said, listen, why don't we, you can choose to talk to me or you don't have to talk to me. It's completely up to you. Knowing that if you do talk to me, I will completely keep it private. I will respect your privacy, but it helps to get it off your chest. I said, why don't we just take a walk? And we would take a walk around the school. And I said, listen, this happened to be during recess time, so I wasn't in the middle of teaching. But I said, even if we just go for a walk, you don't have to talk to me, but the walking might help. And so as we were walking, she started talking. And as she's talking, it was this problem that was so minor, but to her it was huge. And so I said, okay. I said, I've listened, and do you want some suggestions on how to handle that? And so she said, yeah. And I said, okay. So here are some options. What do you think would solve this problem? She was having an issue with one of her friends. And she said, I think I need to talk to her about it. I said, I do think you need to talk to her about it, because otherwise you're never going to solve this problem, and it's going to continue to stress you. And so we talked about some phrases that she could use, some words that she could use. And, I even role modeled. I said, pretend like I'm her. How are you going to address it? And I then gave her the option. I said, listen, do you want to address this by yourself, or do you want me to go with you and help you? And she decided that she wanted me there, but she wanted to do it on her own. She just wanted me there, just to be there for support. Absolutely. And so she was able to figure out her own solution. She was able to address it herself. And I was just there to support her. But the trigger went away. And so did the stress. And so this is, in my mind, the most important thing that we as adults can do to help our children with stress. Figure out how to get rid of the trigger. If we can. Again, first day of school, we can't get rid of that. But we can take steps to help them to prepare for it. And so I hope that this video has helped. And I do think that we, as adults, need to really it's part of our responsibility to teach kids how to deal with stress. I'm a believer in not just taking the stresses away from the kids and eliminating it and making everything fluff and feel better. I really believe that kids, if they are feeling their own stresses, need to be empowered to solve those problems on their own in the way that they feel comfortable. Sure, you can hear my dogs walking around. That's Nines. Sorry. Again, not a professional YouTuber. Just keeping it real here. And so I hope that this video has been helpful. And I hope for some of you who are concerned with your kids, with their stress. Is it stress? Is it anxiety? If you're feeling like you can take some of these strategies and use them and it's helping, then great. If you feel like it's something that's so super severe, that is internal, it's very consistent and persistent, then perhaps something that you're going to want to talk to a guidance counselor about at school, or talk to your pediatrician and see what they have for advice. Again, I am not a medical doctor, but I do think that stress is normal. We all deal with it. We all have it, and it's not ever going to go away. And so I feel like it's best for us adults to teach our kids how to live with it, how to try to, take things into their own hands and solve their problems on their own as best that they feel comfortable. And giving kids options and how to deal with their stresses. That way, if they're given options, they can make the decision, they have more control, and that's going to also make them feel more empowered and a little bit less stressed. Because whenever they're told what to do, if they're not comfortable with it, then it's just going to cause more stress for them. And so again, giving options as you process through it is going to be more helpful, more effective, and more productive. Um, and they'll be able to carry some of those strategies on throughout the rest of their childhood, um, and hopefully into adulthood, so that as adults, they're not freaking out, um, because they've got good strategies that they've used throughout childhood that you've taught them. So I hope that this has been a helpful video. Um, if you have found value in our video, go ahead and hit subscribe. Subscribing to our YouTube channel just basically shows support for our parenting messages. And so if you have found value in today's video, go ahead and hit subscribe. It's free. You're not going to get junk emails from me. And again, it does show support. So hit subscribe, hit like. If this is a video that you could share with somebody who could benefit from it, share with them. And definitely add comments, because again, the more we share, the more we learn, and the better parents we become. So thank you for joining us. I look forward to next time. Thank you for your support.